back to another episode of Warren Cali. In this episode, I'm going to detail the story of Bay Area rapper Philthy Rich, younger brother J-Bay. J-Bay was born Jason Beasley on February 26, 1992 in Oakland, California. Him and his brother Philip Beasley, also known as the rapper Philthy Rich, would grow up in the streets of Oakland and in an area called Seminary to be exact. Seminary would gain many names off the reputation of the area, like Sim City and the Kill Zone, all being a high and crime-riddled area. By the 80s, Oakland became one of the most dangerous places in California and also America, with many crews forming and fighting to take over the booming drug trade, and all of Oakland will become affected. Many nice neighborhoods became home to many drug-infested homes and streets, and the community of Seminary will fall victim to poverty, shootings, murders, and drug dealers taking over the neighborhood, and J-Bay and Philthy Rich will grow up seeing this as their daily life. They looked up to the older guys, and the older guys in the neighborhood had their hands in everything, from crime, robbery, murder, drug dealing, and pimping. So growing up in this environment, both Philthy and J-Bay became adapted to the street life early. They would do whatever to survive the streets, and pimping and selling drugs will become their main source of income. Being in the streets would put J-Bay and Philthy in a lot, from almost close calls with death, losing friends to gang violence, and jail time. All these situations made Philthy want to get off the streets and focus on a rap career, which he would start to take serious, but he still dabbled in the streets to support his rap career. Philthy Rich started to gain a local buzz off dropping a lot of music and being a part of a rap collective called Livewire. That group featured other rising Bay artists like Little Blood and Jay Stalling, among others. During this time period, J-Bay would still take part in street activity, while his brother tried to get them out the streets by going legit. But music was a hard grind. It would take several years for Philthy to start gaining a lot of traction off his music and making money in the industry. J-Bay, off the advice of his older brother Philthy Rich, would decide to give rap a try, already knowing the streets wasn't going anywhere. He would start to drop songs on his brother's YouTube channel, and also rep his brother's newly formed record label, Funk or Die, also known as FOD. J-Bay would even drop numerous of songs by 2013, and even make his own YouTube channel to release his music and also his videos. In May of 2013, a man named Paul, who went by Psycho, and J-Bay were pimps in Oakland. And also their friend Ruben, aka Young LR, he was in part of everything they also was involved in, and J-Bay and Young LR even rapped together in several songs. J-Bay knew a 17-year-old girl whose name was withheld, with her being a minor at the time. She was a prostitute in Oakland, and had been since she was 15 and ran away from home. So as I continue the story, I'm going to refer to her as Jane. Jane was a renegade, meaning she didn't have a pimp, but she knew pimps in the area, including Paul and J-Bay. Paul wanted Jane to work for him, but she refused. On June 2nd, 2013, Jane and J-Bay hung out and had sex. The next day, J-Bay planned to drive Jane out of town where she would work for him. Jane, however, changed her mind and asked J-Bay to drop her off to her house. J-Bay didn't drop Jane off at all. Instead, he took her to several other locations and eventually stopped the car on an isolated road near a corner where Paul was standing with 3 or 4 men, including a man named Ruben, also known as Young LR. Paul had a gun, and Paul and the other man dragged Jane out J-Bay's car, and Jane screamed for help, but J-Bay didn't assist her, and Jane felt J-Bay had set her up because he let the man drag her out his car. Paul beat Jane with his gun, striking her multiple times in the face, and busted her head. She lost so much blood and fell unconscious. Paul also put his gun in Jane's mouth and told her to shut up. Then he and several other men grabbed Jane by her hair and threw her in the trunk. The car stopped at Paul's apartment, and Paul dragged Jane inside. At the apartment, Jane was thrown to the ground several times, and she was beaten. As she was beaten, she blacked out several times. When she regained consciousness, she seen that she was taped up and had a blindfold over her face. She was then placed into a bedroom, and Paul and another man started cutting on her. They cut her with a machete, first starting on her breast, then on her back, leg, and stomach. Paul then would say, "You better make my money, I'm going to kill you." J-Bay was there the whole time, and just watching didn't help. Jane then drifted in and out of consciousness, and her head was busted open. She lost a lot of blood, and her eyes were swollen shut. She awoken in the bedroom, and she was naked and cut up, and had garbage bags wrapped around her. Being left unattended for a while, Jane managed to break loose and jump out a window. A man saw Jane and gave her a shirt and called the police. The man told the police that 2 men with guns had been looking for Jane, and he identified Paul as one of the men. About 5 minutes later, the police arrived and found Jane under a car. She was terrified and kept asking the police to get her out of there. Jane begged the police officer to help her and said men were trying to kill her. She said she knew where the man lived and they lived nearby. Jane's face was swollen and she was bleeding, and she still had duct tape wrapped around her. Jane showed the police the car used to kidnap her and the apartment where she was held. She gave the police the name Paul and identified Paul's picture and said he'd been seeking her to be a prostitute and that he tried to kill her. Jane also told the police someone was looking for her and all these guys had a lot of guns. Jane was later taken to a hospital where she would give her statement. The car used to kidnap Jane belonged to Paul and also the apartment. Inside the apartment, police found a box containing Paul's wallet and also his personal documents, including his birth certificate. Police also found a roll of duct tape and black trash bags, and also a knife that was used to stab Jane. Police also found bullets in the apartment and also blood on a windowsill, which belonged to Jane, along with fingerprints all around the apartment, which belonged to Ruben and Paul, putting them to the crime. Everyone involved in this crime will go on the run, but Paul in July of 2013 would get into an altercation with another man, which led to a fight, and Paul would lose that fight. This led to Paul grabbing his gun from his car and shooting the man multiple times, and this would take the man's life. Paul would later be arrested for the murder, and while he was in jail, additional charges would be added with him kidnapping Jane and being a part of everything he was in that crime. Everyone in this crime would be arrested, including J-Bay and Ruben. Shortly before trial, J-Bay would ask Jane, "Please don't snitch on me, don't tell on me, and don't tell what happened." Jane would say at court she couldn't identify Ruben because he looked different than what she remembered. Paul and J-Bay's attorney characterized Jane as a liar who told numerous versions of what occurred. Ruben's attorney would say that it was terrible what happened to Jane, but to say that Ruben was there and that his palm print was found on some duct tape and that was the evidence against him was very unreliable. Judge Clay, who ruled in this case, would take this case serious. Judge Clay showed leniency towards J-Bay, who had the least significant criminal history of the group. It did not appear to attack Jane. J-Bay was sentenced to 15 years. Judge Clay would say, "I have to say, he's the only one who expressed any remorse for the victim." J-Bay is now 32 years old, and his earliest parole date is in 2030. Since he's been in prison, J-Bay's brother Philthy has become a successful rapper and mentioned him in several songs and is always shouting him out, saying free him. But many people don't agree what J-Bay did, with him being a part of a minor being kidnapped and taken against their will. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.